I will have like a set of introductions, because really what I want to introduce is my my work. I do have 3 kinds of work, and one of these economic methodology, as well as I do a kind of research in income inequality and all sorts of inequality. This kind of inequality issue, because I measured inequality, I calculate Gini coefficient, TEL index, and all these sort of things for Mexico in 2006 in my doctoral dissertation, and that led me to the very important and kind of like enigmatic a topic of economic justice. And then I tried to make my mark in this thing. Later on, I discovered that this issue of economic justice, it is very broad, and there had been several strands, and I tried to make like a taxonomy of this issue, but that was not enough, because when I want to make my taxonomy of economic justice and distributed approaches, I discovered some sort of like intermingle and some collisions and some clashes between schools, and that is the reason let me introduce my slides here. And if for whatever reasons I'm talking and I say that the slides are there and are not there, please let me know, because sometimes I make these stupid mistakes, right? And of course, if I am talking very much and I want to show you personally what it is, please let me know as well if you can, if we are like synchronized, right, between one and the other. Of course, that you can click in the image if you want to see me, and also if you can come back to the presentation if you want as well, right? So I've been doing this for a long period of time, because this economic methodology is not a very in economics. People want to see formulas. People want to see these tables and comparative studies and things like that. But this is like between my hobby and my passion. So I want to show you. So the outline for this presentation will have a research context, which is the thing that I'm doing right now. Some sort of introduction for the topic that I want to show you. I will talk about traditional definition value judgments in economic theory. And I will talk about the main distributive justice approaches in economics as well. So we will have an alternative to the ancient Greece approach, which is the Jewish tradition, and I will talk about responsibility. That is the thing that I want to emphasize, some concluding remarks and some references, right? It's very interesting that, for instance, for this presentation, I have these quotations from Jesus, right? That you Samaritans worship what we know. We worship what we do know because salvation is from the Jews. It's emphasizing, I don't know, Jesus will not be very politically correct this time. I mean, how? From the Jews? Come on. But you have, I see that you have it it's like your motto or your slogan from your department, and actually for your whole university, and the truth will set you free. You have that. And it's very interesting for me that it's in the same part of the same gospel, and all those words were said by Jesus. So let's see if there are some issue that we can see from the Jews. I really believe that we can see that, and also if that too can make us free, because by now the issue in inequality is some sort of like inflammatory argument. Every time that we are talking about inequality, injustice, unfortunately, it is inflammatory, is not participative, and neither constructive, right? So the thing that I'm saying right now is like I want to engage in a serious conversation with all of you in order to enrich my own research, but I also acknowledge that whenever I talk about these methodological issues, there are some clicks. So there are some things that I notice that my colleagues having their own research, and then this makes us think sometimes out of the box. So, or at least something original, right? In regards to methodology, it is true that there is nothing new under the sun, but at least it can be renewed, or at least it can be shown that it is a present type of knowledge, right? I do things about the issues of rationality and inequality. The references are there, and today I will talk a bit about this last one, right? So I am in the process of publishing a book that is called Hellenic Roots of Justice and Inequality and Jewish Ideological Alternative in Economic Science. It's in the last stage of the process of publication. There are the reviewers right now trying to destroy my work, and I will not let them do it. So I'm sorry for that. That comes from my heart, right? Really, I'm just waiting from the reviewers of my referees, but anyway. So in the first chapter, I will talk about the fourth one today, but I want to make a context of the things that I'm doing, right? So in the first chapter, I discuss heavily the roots of the idea of inequality. I talk about Aristotle and Aquinas and the Catholic Church and things like that. And I discovered that the issue that we have here as inequality, as injustice, right, is repeated by Marx with the Jewish hatred. So it's that the issue of this Jewish hatred made me question why Marx hate the Jewish so much, even though he was Jewish, right? So I covered that in the first chapter. The second chapter, I discussed the philosophical basis, meaning that these historical issues, right, how that impact the ideology, right, in the social sciences. And I talk about Bentham, Descartes, the Soviets. There are many roles working, and contemporary Amartya Sen, right? In the third chapter, I focus later on because I publish in this book in a series of books that are related with Jewish studies. So they asked me to put a third chapter in order to tackle the type of strand of the Jewish tradition that I was mentioning. And actually, I discovered there that this Jewish tradition that we have nowadays, which is called the rabbinic theology, is not quite different from the Catholic tradition and the Marxian tradition that we used to have in regards to inequality. But by this time, you are wondering why he wondered about inequality. Of course, that inequality is bad, and the government is corrupt, and they are to be they should be ashamed for that, and things like that. There are a lot of things for instance, in economics. John Romer talk about inequality, and actually it is not something that you wonder. It is an axiom, right? It's something that you should believe, and if you don't believe that, you should be ashamed of that, right? Even if you are rightist, you should have some sort of like a Marxian taste, something like that. Marxian, I say Martian, right? Like from Mars. No, it's from Marx, right? And the fourth chapter, which is the one I will talk in, is totally related with economic literature. We'll tackle in detail how different strands of justice, right, clash one another, and they defend how justice should be conceived, and I will offer a solution for that. So the fifth one is related with a critique in regards to Professor Wright, and I use that in order to criticize the capability approach, which for me is kind of very blurred, dispersed. It's a very nice idea, but the statistical abuse that it allows is something that we should consider very heavily, right? Overall, I argue that the very pervasive Marxist view is not needed, and neither value-free statement about equality. So I wonder if less inflammatory alternatives are there, and of course that I want them to consider. So let me tell you this thing. In 2000, in the beginning of 2000s, I wondered about these topics of inequality. Really, at that time, nobody cared. So they were talking in Mexico. We have like our arrangements in order to measure poverty. I don't know if you remember, President Fox was trying to make a committee. And at that time, I was really, I have a hard time getting information about inequality measures in Mexico. Really, there were none. And actually, conceptually, that was not necessary. That was not allowed. And then at that time, in 2005, 2006, when I was writing my dissertation, people look at me, and this Tony and Miriam will know that they were looking at me like what this guy is talking about. This guy is like talking nonsense, right? And actually, this is the story of my life, but that's another issue, right? And I was talking about inequality, and something happened. Something happened there. I mean, in 2010, we have the violent uprising, which started in Tunisia. And also 2011, the Occupy Wall Street movement, which was not very published, right? But it was something that was going on. There were some protests. Right now, for instance, 2020, there is no politician, right, or ideological leader, or influencer, or YouTuber, or whatever, that having a different platform. That social justice, right? Everyone starts with that. At that time, I wonder why this kind of thing happened, right? Let me. In 2006, something very important happened. I was, I was studying these philosophical roots, and I needed to deep into religion issues and councils and Vatican issues. And in 2006, 2007, 2008, there were some series of statements where the Catholic Church changed the way we conceive sin. And let me tell you that in the Catholic Church, there is one department that says what it is right and what it is wrong. It's the penitentiary department or something like that. There are a bunch of theologians that says, oh, looking at porn is wrong. Eating too much spaghetti, it is also wrong, and things like that, right? I didn't know that there was a department like that, but they changed it. We used to think that the sins that are very the worst are the 7 capital sins, so they changed it. So now you can watch your porn without any problem. Now you can eat as much spaghetti as you want, but what you cannot do is to touch issues with armed destitution and that causing poverty, social inequality, and injustice, and accumulative excessive wealth. Let me tell you one thing previous to that. The means to get your wealth, that's where the sinful or non-sinful issue. Corruption was a sin. But not moral. But something was venial sin, right? It is something why in our societies in Latin countries, corruption is not an issue. Why? It's not a sin. If it is a sin with 3 Hail Marys, that is okay, right? There, it changed. So now we have the only fact that you are rich, you are a sinner, right? And that changes very much. I wonder, that came exactly in a period of time when the church was beaten very heavily, very, very similar to the Protestant Reformation, because they were accused of covering pedophiles and these sort of things with these sexual scandals. This came really out of the blue. Out of the blue. I mean, for me, it was very good because I was working all these years, and really the time when I presented my dissertation talked about an issue that was very sinful, right? So it is something that came to me very good, but really for the rest of the society, not really, right? So we have a very fierce reaction during this decade, right? Even in economics, we have our champion, which is Mr. Piketty, which says that inequality was produced by the oppression of the rich people, and he recommended a transfer, a type of policy that transferred from the rich to the poor. I mean, when I read his book, I wonder, because he makes some regressions from the year zero. I mean, I was having trouble getting information for my country in the sense of inequality from the 1980s, and this guy came from a series starting with when Jesus was born. He present data for that, and of course that I look into, and really he made the data, but everybody believe it, and everybody say the rich has been richer and the poor has been poorer, and then let's do something about it, right? And today, this issue of inequality and injustice, it is spread all around, and actually, as I tell you before, there have been issues in regards to lower this kind of thing. There are people talking about the 1% of the people getting 80% of the cake and things like that, and of course that they torn their shirts and everything. They say, oh, this is very bad, right? Nobody does anything particularly bad. Everybody is very concerned, right? So this paper, it talks about an applied level, and I want to encapsulate all these approaches, and I think that all these are like a Greek toxic pill, and I try to offer a solution that can be implemented and recorded, and really to do something in regards to lower the issue of inequality. When I was doing my Gini indexes, my TEL indexes, when I was programming in Stata and things like that, I discovered that they were doing some things to the data in order to make those things appear. For instance, one of the things that I wonder is the issue of anonymity, which it allows getting all the information and order it from highest to lowest or lowest to highest. But really, what I wonder is that really, when I am ordering this data, this person at the very beginning of the distribution, which is very poor, which is near to another person, very close to another very also destitute person, they don't know each other, and actually they live in a very separate region. But because I say so, I order it, and it appears as if those persons, destitute persons, were very close, and also with the rich. And I was thinking, this anonymity axiom is very stupid. The people in the very low part of the distribution don't know each other. They are all spread around. And the only way that we can do in order to lower inequality as such is if we make the persons that are well off or medium well off, right, trying to help their fellows in the lower part of the distribution, which are proximate to them, right? And this is exactly the idea of the old Jewish tradition, right? So I will talk about this later on, right? So when you talk about the issues of distribution, you need to talk about Professor Sen, right? They criticize the utilitarian space of Jeremy Bentham. They say, oh, this guy is very naive. This is a cardinal utility as such. It is not cardinal. And really what is important, for instance, Professor Sen is very careful to emphasize the issue of the dimension, where you are measured the dimension of that any institution, right? He separates these issues of poverty and inequality, which I will cover later on. And you also have in the economics literature, because we are part of like a social sciences, the work of John Rawls. John Rawls talked very heavily about justice, right? In a series of lectures, which later on will publish, will be like a paper the theory of justice, he wondered about how justice should be conceived, and he uses a Kantian approach, right? And he tried to make people, rich people, to morally reflect in those issues of destitution, right? I will cover later on in a little bit more of detail, right? So, but what is in economics? We have a traditional theory, maybe neoclassical, right? We have other types of theory, maybe heterodox theory that say what they say about inequality. We have aquí a quote of Adam Smith, which for me is the father of economics. It's by necessaries, I understand not only the commodities which are indispensably necessary for the support of life, right? But wherever the custom of the country renders it indecent for creditable people, even the lowest order to be without. The poorest creditable person of either sex would be ashamed to appear in public without them. He has this idea of a social convention in the sense that if I have some sort of welfare, some sort of development for my own, I should be able to present myself without shame, right? Actually, he talks about having a nice shirt, a white shirt, like Professor Mosigno's shirt. I mean, like my shirt, which is not just kind of like in a decent appearance. He talks about it should be clean, it should be very, very well ironed and things like that, in order to not to feel ashamed in public, right? He has this kind of like idea. Inequality, it comes from a root of a Latin word, which is kind of like the opposite to the word equality. Professor Gossepat separates this word and trying to disentangle this kind of concept, and he thinks that equality means that the object corresponds to some particular group of objects or persons, and a stronger version should be identity. And here we have like a more like economic sense, like something that I can measure. He thinks like we have identity, like in the very extreme of equality, but also some sort of similarity in the sense that talking about a weaker version, right? And which is a partial correspondence. And then in economics, we want to measure this thing. How to measure? Because from there, the quality concept now is managed to be precise. But the dimension is an issue, should be either education, should be maybe income. And if you're talking about income, it is wealth. There are a lot of measures, which particular aspect, right? If it is the person has the freedom to do that, and how to do that. When we talk about indexes, we should use the Gini coefficient, we should use the Lorentz curve, we should use the TEL and the separate, there are several type of TEL indexes, logarithmic transformations. And then there is discussion also when you have the algebraic discussion of inequality. If it is decomposable, I did it pretty here. If it is decomposable by subgroup, it is decomposable but region and things like that, right? So we have a lot of things going on. Maybe we just use one and we don't care, right? And also, when we talk about destitution, we have this issue of poverty or inequality. In Latin countries, we use it even interchangeably, because in Mexico and Latin countries, both are very high. Both inequality and poverty, it means destitution, and for us, poverty is caused by inequality, by injustice as such, and then for us, we don't care. But for instance, we have countries like India, which are not unequal, right? But they are very poor. I mean, Gini coefficient of India, I think the last time that I saw it is one below 0.3. Very similar to a Gini coefficient of 0.3 as well in Korea, right? But you know, the difference are abysmal. The difference are huge, right? we have in India a very equal spread of destitution as such. So in that sense, inequality is not an issue, poverty is an issue. Professors and others wonder about these poverty and inequality indexes, and actually they try to make one together. Professor Foster think that poverty index should be somehow inequality sensitive, right? And we have poverty index that there are right now like inequality sensitive. I think I mixed up, but Professor Foster made this poverty index inequality sensitive and the opposite as well, right? So in academia, we have this word of poverty associated with a group of people waiting in some sort of despair. They are waiting for help, right? And inequality means for us that these people is eager to protest very fiercely because of their poor conditions. What happens is that when a person is very poor, he doesn't have the strength to protest as such. So that's and then for us, we in academia, we should be their voice, right? But also people in the middle income and things like that, they really want to make a protest. They want to voice be heard. So we have all these things going on methodologically, right? And so what is the response for that? Really, the poor people is there waiting in despair. The inequality, the people that feels that inequality is going on, they are like very angry, right? And really, we don't see how this thing can be solved. We just blaming the government. And my question is like, what happened? All of us, our brothers keepers, or we just wait for that our money in form of taxes helps to alleviate all the problems in the world, and that is the things I wonder, right? So we have I cover heavily in my book. Hopefully I will have it later on if you invite me to present it whenever it is published. I really you will have the prime of this of my career. I hopefully that will happen soon. And in my book I talk about the Aristotelian heritage, so which is repeated by the Marxist tradition, and it's right now the most evoked, the most tell tradition. And then they see this sort of inequality as a source of exploitation. And the problem here is that he did not make a difference between how the people got rich. If he got rich by corrupt means, of course, I agree that he should not be entitled to his richness. But if he did it honestly with this job and with his job and things like that, I think should be entitled. There is no difference. Wealth is literally demonized by the Marxian tradition. And that is an issue right now. And actually, let me tell you one thing. That is exactly the position the Catholic tradition took in 2008. Exactly that position. Wealth is demonized. And I don't think that should be like that, right? So in my view, these concepts are very inflammatory, discriminative towards people that earn their money honestly, and very demagogic, because if it is true that we should be against this unfairness, really nobody does anything, right? I just hear posting in my Facebook, oh yes, you know, these scandals and people getting rich, oh yes, I disagree, and I put my emoticons and things like that. But really I did something? I mean, somebody can be at my side, I can help them. Maybe somebody is begging, somebody is asking me for some money. We have here, some people ask for a burrito. I don't know, there people ask for taco or whatever. And we just look at him as if he was like a fly, you know. Oh, you are the social fly, and I am very busy, and I don't know, that's the government's problem. You know, it's not my problem at all. And we just run away. We don't do anything. And for me, this kind of expressions of discontent in regards to social injustice is more like a societal tantrum, right? Everybody complains. Nobody does anything. I don't know if we are here, if you are following me here, right? So we have different flavors of this inequality issue, right? And I will talk about what they say. The main distributive approaches understand fairness differently, and I will talk about this in detail, right? So I make a taxonomy of these kind of like approaches in regards to justice. Everybody dislikes injustice, and I agree with that, but they do in a different way, right? We have the utilitarians, right? They care about pleasure, and actually those are the fathers of the abstract representations of inequality because of the mathematical body they left us. Kantians are very into metaphysics, into I won't say spiritual, but but really they are very close in the sense like humanism is very close to the word that they want to see people in a very human way, right? We have several strands. We have Rawls, which is, I think, the most known person in regards to Kantian approaches, and we have their students or their influences, as Ronald Dworkin, which is the one that we think when we talk about equality of opportunities. We have others like Parfit, which talks about prioritarianism. How I say it at the first one? Well, good for me. And others, which are Martian, and when I call Martian, they care about the result. They want the equality of result, and if they don't have it, they complain bitterly, right? Even if a person get this help from the government and he just use it in alcohol or drugs or whatever, that person remains poor. But egalitarians will say, what happened? You know, the government should do something before, like training or whatever. But in the sense of egalitarians, really do not touch individual responsibility. They don't care. They just care about social responsibility. I will talk about sense capabilities, which is a mixture. It is very common in him to mix everything. Of course, that I will say why the Jewish tradition is quite different, right? So everything is in my book. So the traditional view, which is libertarian in essence, and we think that those are like the righteous person. We think that they don't care about equality. Actually, they do. They do, and quite heavily. They assume that the preconception of an equality is really embedded in the notion of equality under the law, like in the sense that everyone is entitled to certain rights, and then that for them is a fair game. So they really care about equality as such. They just simply say that everyone is free to manage their cards in their way they want it, right? And for them, the result, it should be more like an issue, like an outcome, right, of individual outcome. But they really care. So they care about the freedom that go to the market as well. And sometimes they clash bitterly with Marxists because of the timing, of the distribution. They claim that at the beginning everybody is equal under the law. So it might be, in my view, I don't know this, maybe the right-wingers are not that rightist. Maybe they might be conceptually leftist, right? But the timing is quite different, right? So they are criticized in the sense that these egalitarians, social welfare theory critics say that the egalitarians, they are very soft, like, because they allow intermediate inequalities. And actually, this is a very Aristotelian idea, very Catholic idea, in the sense of not allowing any sort of injustice, or they equate this issue of injustice, inequality in the same manner, and they do not make a separation between getting some kind of like benefit by good means, and they claim that every time it is done unjustly. So the traditional theory look down towards this normative type of theories, and they claim, oh, you know, you are very strict. You're very strict. I don't understand why. And really, this is the issue, right? And of course that they are accused one another in regards to prejudice. And whenever you want to think about efficiency, why don't you think about equality? Because those concepts, for us economists, efficiency clashes bitterly with the concept of equality, which is an issue of distribution. I teach when I teach microeconomics that the economics is the sciences of scarcity, right? And this equality assumes that there is no scarcity as such, that it's just an issue of distribution. And then they treat each other as if they were Protestants and Catholics from different traditions, right? Maybe, I don't know, they have the same root, and they do. In economic theory, we have the discussion of Kaldor-Hicks during the 39th. Both of them, they presented a different paper, right? With the same idea, saying that as long as the winners can compensate the losers, that will be okay. I mean, if the size of the pie was growing, that will be okay, because everyone was getting more. But Saitovsky says, you know, I don't really think that is the way, because the rich people will never accept these sort of things. And then Saitovsky used a reversal condition, and actually he rejects this idea of the Kaldor-Hicks criteria. Really, what it is here is the role of the government. For neoclassicals, for libertarians, the government is there in order to guarantee property rights. They want to be sure that the rights will be assured. But on the other hand, the egalitarians say, no, the government should be there in order to distribute. And I remember when I was in California in a seminar, and they were talking about land reform. One of the professors asked these students, which was obviously Asian, from Pakistan, wherever, land reform, and then he asked, what is a land reform? And then she said, oh, they take land from the rich and give it to the poor. And then for them, you know, for him, it was shocking, because he was thinking, oh, it could be my land, and I don't want the government to take it away from me. So that is really what is going on in regards to the government. So whenever we see a paper, sometimes it is not. It is there that the government is there in order to guarantee property rights. But for me, it's very funny when I see a paper and with mathematics and stuff, and they want the government to distribute. And then I mean, they are really the opposite things. Conceptually, those are totally opposite, right? So that was the libertarian base. We do have some sort of utilitarian basis as well, in the sense that we don't care very much about pleasure. We do some sort of things when we do consumer theory that we maximize utility, but really we are not thinking in the individual, like getting as much pleasure and using that in a social context. We think, oh, okay, that's a way to express that this guy is drinking one Coke or one beer, and maybe the second one will not give him as much utility and things like that, in order to portray my diminishing marginal utility concept. but somehow it's there. What it is very important is the U and X1 and X2, which is the heritage of Jeremy Bentham. Wasn't his purpose to use math, but he did it in order to portray. Actually, he didn't use math. He used some sort of arithmetical concept when his felicific calculus, when he make a list of the pleasure that you get when you have one banana, one apple, and things like that. Something that in economics later on we'll try to get rid of, because we don't like cardinal approaches. We like more like ordinal approaches, right? So it used to be mocked, his cardinal basis. As it is mocked, I don't know if you see the icon that he portrayed himself, you know, when he died, he tried to put his head in a mummified form. Later on, it happens something horrible. If you see Jeremy Bentham mummified, you see a very nasty shape, like proper of a horror Hollywood movie, right? So it is more or less what we have today. We don't care about the pleasure until recently, but really what we care is about the mathematical representation. So a lot of people criticize utilitarians, Lionel Robbins, in the sense that it is not really possible to measure, to quantify satisfaction of two persons. David Hume, before that, talked about this issue as well, like going beyond the scope of science, and they didn't solve this issue. Rawls later on and Amartya Sen will criticize the utilitarian approach, particularly the metaphysical part, right? Really, I think Jeremy Bentham didn't care about this thing right now, because what do economists care is about the abstract representation, which still stands. So this is more like the heritage of the utilitarians, which is mathematical representations, which is very in the whole the sciences that are trying to going towards these abstract representations, right? So basic roles, the other school, which is, I mean, I'm talking about this, I cover more or less this, I cover more or less the libertarians, the utilitarians. Now I would talk about Kantian, which is the most dense part of this justice issue. There are basically two ideas. One in the sense that I should put myself in the shoes of the other person with this bill of ignorance. He talks about that lengthily, like these books are very heavy. Basically, that's the main idea. And he uses, not surprisingly, later on, the critique of Marx, saying, okay, we should do that in order to follow an equal distribution. He is like an egalitarian as well, though he allows sometimes some sort of intermediate unequal distribution if it is going towards a fair distribution, as he said, right? So this is discussed at length in his theory, right? And it is, for me, it is like Rawls is like a Bible in the living room of each house. You know, it's there. Actually, sometimes it is open in Psalm 91. I don't know why, or Psalm 92. It is there. It's never used, but it is there. And people say that it's very important. So it has been influential. The most influential part that we know right now is in Ronald Dworkin, when he talks about equality of opportunities. Curiously, Ronald Dworkin is Jewish as well, and he thinks in inequality in a source of a kibbutz. I don't know if you know this form of organization, production, family that it is very common in Israel. Not a lot of groups have this organization, but there are kibbutz there when they don't have really any individual property. All the property is common and they work for everybody. And he thinks like society should be something like that. Like come here, we should start with the same distribution. And this is the remaining of roles with a mixture of like of a kind of Jewish, right? So basic needs approach, I wouldn't talk lately about this. It's the most influential part in our measurement today. It comes from this League of Organization of Labor in 1960s. Later on, the basic needs approach, which was very supported by the Soviet Union, really they want to measure poverty in the developed world, particularly in the American world, because they want them to make them aware that really that they were not having this Rostonian type of heaven when everyone will have like airplanes and stuff. Let me tell you, is anyone? I'm sorry, I was thinking that somebody raised their hand. So they were bitterly complaining that not all the people were getting this kind of like the abundance that they were thinking, and really the basic needs approach foundation want to measure that. They started with income, but also they continue measuring different dimensions, and that is the basis of the human development reports when they care about education, and they care separate to income, and also they care about health, right? So I will leave that like that. The Sen, it is when he talks about the capability approach, really I could make of this course like really a mini course for students, because the literature is abundant, right? But and when I was in Oxford with in working as a researcher, and I focused there that I discovered that the capability approach is very deep, and it's more like a religion. But it's focused on individual right now. When we see any multidimensional approach, really is related with the work of the capability approach of Amartya Sen and his list of capabilities and things like that, right? So, but it is empirically abused. We can measure even like the quantities of TVs or fridges or whatever is important, or gender, everything that is statistically that can be statistically represented, it is mentioned that it is a dimension. And right now we have now a dispersion of measurement, right? Which is not very good. So the last one is the happiness literature, which is right now kind of influential in some circles. We started with the work of Bernard Prague, really tried to recover a bit of what Jeremy Bentham did. He thinks that happiness is important, and they have a lot of surveys, right? So we have a circle of happiness and egalitarianism, and then coming back to happiness. So what is this? What is my solution? My solution for that is that to look at the old Jewish tradition. The old Jewish tradition respect the established government, something that is not very common right now. Actually, going against the government is in right now, and recover what individuals we can do in regards to the other. So what I propose, and actually I don't talk about this lengthily because we'll be in the same style of all these people that talk about lengthily about this issue of justice. I just propose that the separation of type of inequalities, but even though if we separate this, if that is not possible, let's do something about it. So we know neighbors that are in bad shape because of health issues, because of economic issues, because of bad decisions, because of any sort of things that we are aware. We have the information. A lot of times, whenever, for instance, when I was researching my issue of inequality, and I was trying to get into the federal government, which I did, I talked with persons in the Ministry of I don't know the name in Spanish, but it is the ministry that give to people, to the poor. The ministry, you can help me anyway. So they told me that the most difficult thing was the focus. The focus. They didn't have the information where the poor people were. We assume that the government has the information, but really they don't. And so we have these sort of things in some sort of surveys, in the census, or when they do this employment data, but really there is no record. So, but we as citizens, we do have this sort of information, and we can share that with the government, right? In this sense, this will not be philosophically oriented. We just simply I want people to recover this essence of responsibility. So we want the government not to care about, I mean, not to make the transfers, but to supervise the transfers, which is quite different. So in this sense, all of us recording this kind of like help, we can help the people in something that people, okay, you already have it. It is called altruism. Okay, altruism, I can give the money to somebody in Africa or to somebody in Asia. But really, this is a transfer that I am recommending for the people in need, but very, very proximate to you. And I want the government to make a record and to make a log of these transfers in order to promote real development. So I propose this endogenous government intervention. It should be something. I will finish very soon. I just need 3 minutes. This endogenous government intervention should be summoned, right? Taking from the Jewish tradition, the people used to do that in order to please their God. I really don't think that, of course, that should be important, right? But really, I want the government to supervise these transfers, to promote this transfer, and the government should promulgate and enforce a law compelling each other to their citizens to act to ease inequality. Actually, there is no other way to do that. And a public policy should serve to make a plan and recorded log of responsible transfers by each citizen. Basically, just one person should not be subject of this law, which is the poorest person in the country or in the community. And the objective is to make each member in the society responsible for that. This objective, which should be expedite to proximate fellows local. I talk about this lengthily in the second chapter of my book, but really this is like the summary of how those transfers should be enforcing this kind of transfer. And now the technology makes this possible. We are connected. Why don't we use it to transfer from the rich of the poor, each one, and to make this even tax deductible? So as a part, okay, instead of like giving all the money for, I don't know why, half of this will go to the government and the other half will go to the people around me. So summing up, in regards to value judgment, I argue that we need to assume a perennial Marxist setup. I show more or less that all the schools are related somehow with the Marxist, Aristotelian, and Aquinas sort of approach. We can still try to measure inequality, but in order to ease that up, in order to lower that up, in why I want people to feel responsible of that, and the government addressing the problem might explore the reasons of inequality in order to lower that as well. So that was it. Thank you for listening to me, and I will take your questions. And this is the bibliography, something like that. So.
Muchas gracias, doctor.
De nada, gracias. Gracias por escucharme. Gracias.
Al contrario,
es un placer,
por la plática tan interesante.
Gracias.
Me gustaría ver si alguno de ustedes tiene alguna pregunta, alguna inquietud que le quisiera hacer al doctor David, pues con toda confianza.
Yeah.
Luis.
¿Ya?
Sí, doctor, dígame, doctor Sánchez, dígame. Se le apagó el micrófono, doctor. Se le apagó el micrófono.
Ya,
Ahora sí.
perdón.
Listo.
Luis, no sé, yo tengo varias preguntas. De hecho, todo esto me parece muy interesante y me gusta mucho este enfoque de la responsabilidad personal o social de los judíos. Hay varias partes que me quedaron un poco vagas. Entonces, por ejemplo, esta construcción de la tradición griega no me acaba de convencer. O sea, yo no encuentro realmente la línea entre Aristóteles, Santo Tomás, Marx, ¿no? O sea, me quedaría más claro una línea entre Aristóteles y Adam Smith, entre Aristóteles y Zen y todo, pero Marx realmente no. Y en cuanto creo que la idea libertaria como tú la planteas es un poco simplista porque parece ser, es como esta idea libertaria bastante fringe de que cada quien obtiene lo que se merece en el mercado, ¿no? Pero el mismo Hayek no está de acuerdo con eso, ¿no? Porque dice que precisamente hay cosas en el mercado que no, o sea, no se puede sostener eso precisamente porque no tenemos todo el conocimiento de lo que pasa en el mercado. Entonces, lo que tú discutes sobre la responsabilidad que tenemos cada quien me parece mucho más cercano a la postura libertaria que a otras. Y me acuerdo de hay un clip en YouTube de Milton Friedman en una conferencia donde alguien le increpa y le dice, oiga, pero si el gobierno no hace las cosas, entonces ¿de quién es la responsabilidad de apoyar a los otros? Y dice, pues tuya, mía, de todos nosotros, ¿no? Que pues se parece mucho a lo que estás planteando.
Sí,
Y perdón, no, sí, tengo otra pregunta.
adelante. El asunto es que no está, digo, el gobierno siempre nos echa la culpa, ¿no? El asunto es que no hay un método ahorita para hacer a las personas responsables. En relación a Hayek, habla de imaginación, y ahí pues hay un componente metafísico platónico, quizá a lo mejor, digo yo cuando menciono que Marx tiene una concepción aristotélica es porque lo cita a Aristóteles, cita su documento y, por ejemplo, Aristóteles habla acerca de la virtud y cuando señala las 7 virtudes, ¿verdad? Sí. Y una de ellas es la justicia, él tiene la idea relativa a la equidad que tenemos el día de hoy, porque incluso Aristóteles habla de una suma aritmética de las cosas, ¿no? Marx toma esta idea y cita a Aristóteles, y lo único que hace Marx, y también aquí esto lo discuto ampliamente en mi libro, porque Marx lo único que hace es, en lugar de decir que la fuente del valor es el dinero como tal, Marx lo utiliza, lo considera secundario el dinero, y él establece el trabajo. Como un factor principal, pero cuando digo que lo toma, es porque lo cita. Entonces,
sí, no, claro, sí. No,
claro,
pero creo que ahí hay una diferencia entre lo que, o sea, porque creo que Aristóteles considera la justicia como una propiedad de las personas, mientras que Marx y sus seguidores consideran a la justicia como una propiedad de las sociedades, y ahí hay una diferencia significativa, ¿no?
Bueno, ahí esta parte
de justicia social.
Marx le interesaba, pues era el palero del gobierno, ¿no? En ese tiempo él quería obtener un trabajo, en ese tiempo funcionaba, pues era muy agria la respuesta del gobierno, incluso había una religión de Estado, a la que su padre renunció al judaísmo para hacerse parte de esa religión. Y Marx también lo usa. Entonces, es muy interesante esta parte. Hayek a mí se me hace más como platónico en el sentido. Y el día de hoy en la academia, casi sí tenemos algo de discusión platónica, metafísica. Hegel, por ejemplo, sería esa parte, irse por ahí. Pero cuando vamos a la parte hegeliana, ¿verdad? Hayekiana y la concepción de las cosas, híjola, realmente yo no veo una diferencia entre la teología católica y cuántos ángeles pueden bailar alrededor de un alfiler. Sí. Entonces, pero me llevo su comentario, gracias. Voy a tratar de poner algo relativo a la concepción metafísica hayekiana en otros lugares. Yo también me fui por literatura. Cuando yo veo, por ejemplo, a Romer, cuando veo a Amartya Sen, no está Hayek ahí, está Rawls, ¿verdad?
Sí,
entonces, claro. Mi crítica es más como un seguimiento documental, pero definitivamente que sí valdría la pena y lo estoy apuntando. Muchas gracias.
Sí. No, y bueno, una última cosa.
Sí,
finalmente, en tu propuesta no me queda claro, habría como varios conflictos con el manejo de los datos privados en esta especie como de exposición, además de que podría ser profundamente humillante que uno sea considerado de los pobretones de la comunidad y que haya como un récord.
Ya lo es. Digo, ya lo es humillante. El asunto es...
Sí, no es humillante, pero aquí sería como una especie de humillación entre privados, ¿no? Que hubiera como un gran pizarrón donde dijera, Luis está en la olla, entonces por favor ayúdenlo, y si lo ayudan, le damos un...
Hay estratos. Por ejemplo, la Secretaría de Hacienda ya tiene datos en relación a nuestro ingreso de cuál debe ser nuestra contribución. Y ellos también tienen nuestros datos, y el día de hoy
pero no los hacen públicos, ¿no? O sea, no hay una base de datos.
Yo no quisiera que se hicieran públicos. Lo que sí yo tendría es un registro del gobierno diciéndome, bueno, yo diciéndole, estas personas están alrededor de mí, y yo puedo hacer contribuciones. El asunto del día de hoy es que el altruismo no lo es en realidad, porque yo elijo. Si no sé si el cáncer, voy y me tomo la foto, ¿verdad? Pago mis 100,000 pesos o lo que sea, y yo obtengo mucho más beneficio por sacarme la foto. Entonces, el día de hoy, el altruismo realmente es un concurso de belleza. A ver
si el altruismo es sancionado por el gobierno, ¿no deja de ser altruismo entonces?
Sí. No, o sea, bueno, en economía, el altruismo no existe. Todos mundos, digo, desde la cita de Adam Smith, todo mundo tiene su interés. Parece ser que el altruismo es así como que estilo Madre Teresa de Calcuta, ¿no?
Sí.
Y Gandhi, y nosotros en economía sabemos que eso no existe. Aquí yo lo que me enfoco es en verdaderamente utilizar la información que tenemos nosotros como personas, de nuestras personas alrededor. Todos tenemos vecinos, todos tenemos personas que conocemos que le ha ido mal. En ese sentido, y por lo regular el gobierno se espera hasta que no tienen $2 que están bajo el umbral de pobreza, y no es necesario. Hago una recapitulación, por ejemplo, también tomando la tradición judía. Bueno, ¿quién es el pobre, el destituto? Bueno, el huérfano, la viuda, el enfermo. O sea, y estas cosas se pueden tipificar, y puede haber una clarificación respecto a qué es el pobre o qué es haber disminuido. Discuto también en un libro la cuestión de la tradición judía en relación al altruismo. Ellos tienen más desarrollado esa parte porque sí tienen este papel de información. El asunto es que nosotros no tenemos absolutamente nada. Lo dejamos a las buenas intenciones de Carlos Slim y pues y de Bill Gates, ¿no? Y pues eso no ha funcionado, pero gracias. En relación, quisiera a lo mejor después escribir en relación a la parte simplista. Yo estoy más del lado de derecha, ¿verdad? Traté de veras de condensarlo, no traté de darle una connotación peyorativa, la teoría libertaria. Creo que la teoría libertaria tiene buenas partes, y a lo mejor por ahí luego comentamos en correo acerca de eso. Gracias.
Muy bien, gracias, David.
Adelante. Sigue Bianto.
Lari, sí.
Lari.
Adelante, Lari.
Hola, buenas. En cuanto a lo que decía Luis y estabais discutiendo, surgió un dato que conozco que es interesante, que es que la información fiscal en Finlandia es pública.
Oh.
Se hace público, previo pago, hay que pagar, no hay que pagar mucho, pero o sea, pagando una cuota puedes acceder a la información fiscal.
¿Por qué no? Bueno, nomás que aquí se utilizaría para secuestrar gente, ¿no? Ese es el problema.
Pero todo el mundo sabe que Carlos Slim tiene lana, ¿no? O sea,
sí, tiene razón.
Los que tienen lana, la gente ya lo sabe, ¿no?
Sí.
Y de hecho es interesante porque cuando se paga el fisco, los periódicos pagan por acceder a la información fiscal y publican la lista de millonarios y cuánto ganaron y cuánto pagaron de impuestos y demás. No lo hacen con los pobres. Y ahí viene otra cuestión. Los pobres a veces tienen información fiscal no existente.
Sí.
O sea, si no tienen ingresos formales, si no tienen
No, pero sí hay listas. El asunto es que no se registran de manera muy formal. Por ejemplo, cuando yo anduve trabajando en cierto partido político, teníamos listas de gente pobre a la que había que llevar una despensa, algo así. Hay listas, pero curiosamente esas listas venían de los colonos, de los líderes de colonia. O sea, sí había cierta información. Yo creo que a lo mejor ustedes me están dando en el clavo, ¿verdad? En el sentido de que el asunto sería aquí el manejo de la información suficiente y la característica.
Yo voy por otro lado. No, era solo un comentario por lo que estabais comentando de la información, que digo que yo tengo este dato de que la información fiscal resulta que en Finlandia es pública, entonces es como que a ellos parece no importarles demasiado. Luego vienen, pues, mi parte, ¿no? Que sería, como diría el Joker, vivimos en una sociedad, ¿no? Entonces va a depender mucho de cada sociedad cómo se manejan este tipo de cuestiones. Hay sitios donde la gente puede estar más en línea con este tipo de idea, ¿no? O sitios donde la gente no va a estar en línea con este tipo de idea, ¿no? Entonces no es algo universal, no es algo que podamos establecer así como...
Se cortó.
Pues va a depender va a depender de si la gente quiere. Y esto es lo que ha venido ocurriendo a lo largo de la historia. Yo siempre he podido ayudar a mis vecinos. Siempre. Siempre podemos ayudar a nuestros vecinos. Siempre nos podemos ayudar entre nosotros. De hecho, pues en el departamento nos ayudamos a unos a otros con diferentes cosas, pero también siempre yo puedo ayudar a mis vecinos y en la mayor parte de los casos eso ya es deducible de impuestos, ¿no? Cualquier tipo de donación o tal, pues es completamente deducible de impuestos. La cuestión es que como tenemos ya una sociedad enorme y tremendamente compleja, no, soluciones a ese nivel micro de ayudar al vecino, no me queda tan claro cómo van a funcionar desde un punto de vista tan amplio y además que luego está vinculado tremendamente a cuestiones emocionales. Yo ayudo a mi vecino porque lo conozco. Porque es el tipo que me cruzo con él en la calle, lo conozco a lo mejor de nombre, etcétera. Y entonces surgen estas cuestiones en las cuales ayudo, pero ayudo a la gente que a mí me importa. No ayudo a la gente que realmente a lo mejor lo necesita, sino que ayudo a mi familia, ayudo a mis amigos, ayudo a mis conocidos. Y eso lo que va a generar normalmente es que la gente rica se va a ayudar entre la gente rica y la gente pobre se va a ayudar entre la gente pobre.
Y la
gente pobre no tiene mucho donde ayudarse y la gente rica tiene mucho donde ayudarse. Y eso puede llevar incluso a que se incremente el nivel de desigualdad. Porque se ayudan, los que ya tienen mucho se ayudan entre sí y los que tienen poco se ayudan entre sí.
Yo establezco que las transferencias deben ser de cierto estrato en particular a uno menor. Si tú le das dinero a tu vecino que es rico, ese no se registraría. Ahora,
a lo mejor es menos rico que yo, pero no es pobre.
Sí, no, tiene que ser a un estrato menor. Siempre
a lo mejor es un estrato menor, pero no es el menor. No es el menor de todo.
Déjeme decir una cosa. El asunto es que esa persona a la que tú ayudes, te garantizo que va a tener conocidos, a lo mejor, y él está...
pero él a lo mejor luego no les ayuda.
No, es que eso no lo sabemos. Si hay precisamente... Ahora, mi inicio de plática es decir, lo que tenemos ahorita no ha funcionado. No ha funcionado y el estarse rasgando las vestiduras diciendo al gobierno, ahora digo, ojalá y con todo respeto para el doctor Mociño, ojalá que tú fueras mi vecino, ¿no? Yo no tengo vecinos así. O sea, en ocasiones... no todas las gentes son tan altruistas como nosotros pensamos que somos nosotros. Y lamentablemente, yo he visto más altruismo en colonias pobres, entre gente ayudándose, entre gente pobre, ¿verdad? Pero el asunto es por qué no nos incluimos nosotros. Y ahora, yo no estoy negando que nos quitan impuestos. Yo no estoy ofreciendo un impuesto extra, simplemente estoy diciendo que tanto nos quejamos de que esos dineros ¿a dónde van? Bueno, porque una parte yo no la puedo repartir de una manera registrada, ¿verdad? Ayudar a mi vecino, que se le cayó la casa, que se le inundó, que en algo extra. Ahora, la ayuda en la tradición judía antigua es excepcional, no es continua. Y, por ejemplo, en ocasiones tenemos nosotros el caso del desperdicio, cuando se le da a personas constantemente y se hacen clientelistas. Con esto, por ejemplo, yo acabaría con el clientelismo político, así de inicio, porque entonces muchos de esos programas de alimentación, de salud, podrían ser bien cubiertos por una transferencia personal en relación a la información. Pero comparto esa parte del escepticismo, la puedo desarrollar, decir, bueno, yo he tratado, por ejemplo, esta presentación la tuve en la Universidad de Oaxaca. Allá el enfoque era totalmente distinto. Allá me decían en relación a, ¿sabe qué? Está muy padre, tenemos las etnias, tenemos el autogobierno, esto puede fortalecer la parte comunitaria. Aquí yo estoy viendo que ustedes están bien aplicados en cuestiones de la política pública. Esa parte me queda muy claro y puedo yo cubrir, doctor Viante, la parte del escepticismo en relación al gobierno y gracias.
Gracias. Ana Karen.
Ana Karen, gracias.
Listo, muchas gracias. Bueno, doctor, pues muchas gracias por el seminario. A mí me llamó la atención cuando estábamos haciendo la revisión de literatura que no se pusiera más énfasis sobre esta dicotomía entre tener desigualdad estructural y desigualdad de mercado, porque a final de cuentas eso es lo que muchos pues filósofos, economistas, pensadores han justo tratado de recalcar, y donde algunos dicen...
Sí, de las raíces, ¿no? Las raíces de la inequidad.
Claro, donde algunos dicen, por ejemplo, cuando están más apegados a esta parte de desigualdad de mercado, donde asumen que todo es injusto, que nada es injusto porque la desigualdad se origina por las diferencias en esfuerzo, y también están esta otra
escuela. Esfuerzo y talento, mencionan las dos.
Gracias, en esfuerzo y talento. Y luego está esta otra rama que dice, bueno, es que está también la desigualdad estructural, donde en realidad esa desigualdad por definición es injusta, ¿no? Porque hay algunas instituciones que nos están limitando y donde realmente tampoco es mentira, ¿no? O sea, cuando estábamos en la época de la colonia era muy claro, podía ser muy inteligente lo que quisiera, pero si tú no habías nacido en España peninsular, pues no había forma que fueras a ser virrey. Y aún eso es algo que seguimos arrastrando, ¿no? O sea, tan solo el color de piel es algo que sigue siendo una diferencia entre qué tipo de puestos te asignan y qué no. Entonces, a mí me llama la atención porque, a final de cuentas, cuando Rawls empieza a hablar sobre este velo de la ignorancia, yo estoy de acuerdo en que es la mejor forma o una forma más objetiva incluso de tratar de tomar en consideración estos dos extremos, ¿no? En que, en el sentido de vamos a lograr una sociedad donde el que esté peor, cuando menos esté lo mejor posible, y ya el resto, pues que ocurra como sea, que a final de cuentas es poner en marcha tanto tus talentos como tu esfuerzo. Y también, de nuevo, ¿no? El estado de bienestar es eso, ¿no? El estado de bienestar es darles una igualdad de oportunidades y ya después que ocurre el resto. Entonces estoy poniendo este contexto justo en discusión sobre cuál es el papel del gobierno, ¿no? Porque justamente no puedes hacer ni que el gobierno resuelva todo, ni que los individuos resuelvan todo, porque tenemos estos dos tipos de desigualdades que están coexistiendo. Entonces, yo creo que sí hay algunos aspectos que el gobierno tiene que resolver, porque al final la desigualdad no es nada más desigualdad de que veas que una persona gana más que otra. O sea, esa desigualdad tiene orígenes, que son justamente las oportunidades. Sí. Entonces, un piso parejo es justamente eso. Sí.
Bueno, es parte del materialismo histórico, ¿no? El asunto es que en ocasiones, dispensa, se cree como credo que ese materialismo histórico vino de la explotación. Y no es el caso siempre. El materialismo histórico está equivocado. En ocasiones la riqueza vino por prudencia, vino por ahorro, en ocasiones vino por sacrificio. Y ahora, pero definitivamente que sí valdría la pena claro, hacer esa separación estructural y de mercado como menciona, doctora. Adelante, dispense.
Sí, sí, muchas gracias. No, en realidad en ese aspecto estoy de acuerdo con usted, ¿no? Quizá mi único comentario es que realmente el gobierno tiene obligaciones muy claras, ¿no? Y yo creo que tal cual, así como eliminarlo por completo, tampoco es tan sencillo, porque a final de cuentas estamos hablando de un contrato social, ¿no? Y si existe eso es cuando menos para lograr ciertas cosas mínimas, ¿no? Como el hecho de que exista un Estado de Derecho. Entonces, con respecto a su idea, a mí me llama la atención porque yo creo que está poniendo justamente más énfasis en esta parte de responsabilidad de los individuos, ¿no? Pero a final de cuentas, no es lo único. Y yo creo que ni toda la responsabilidad se puede poner en los individuos, ni toda la responsabilidad se puede poner en el gobierno. Y a final de cuentas ese debate pues es lo que mantiene a todas las sociedades tratando de encontrar la solución ideal.
Sí. El asunto es que ahorita, por ejemplo, nosotros no tenemos una cultura, ni siquiera, por ejemplo, prácticamente puede venir cualquier líder político a garantizar que va a disminuir la inequidad en el país, a disminuir la pobreza, y nosotros debiéramos de tener la cultura económica para saber que eso no es posible. No es posible que un gobierno disminuya la inequidad, porque primero que nada, pues no tiene toda la información. A lo mejor puede facilitar el crecimiento, pero la distribución como tal, a través de los programas sociales, tiene cierto impacto, pero no ha tenido el impacto total que se espera, ¿verdad? En esta parte, ahora yo no estoy argumentando que el gobierno debe desaparecer, ¿no? O sea, menciona usted las ideas de John Locke, la teoría del contrato, y ahora recuperadas por Nozick en relación a necesitamos un Estado, ¿verdad? Yo no sé si mínimo, máximo necesitamos un Estado eficiente, pero a mí se me antoja más coherente pensar en un Estado supervisor, ¿verdad? Y ahora, por otro lado, tenemos una renuncia total a la responsabilidad, ¿verdad? Sí, tenemos anuncios de Coca-Cola diciendo que vamos a ser buenos, pero solamente en Navidad. Tenemos el comercial de la hamburguesa, del asiático, el negro, el blanco, dándose la mano, etcétera. Tenemos ese tipo de ideas que a lo mejor pensamos que así somos todos y en la realidad, pues no siempre. A lo mejor relacionado con el comentario del doctor Vianti, en relación de que nosotros favorecemos a los que nos gustan. Ya hay, por ejemplo, en el Islam, en el sistema del Islam, un esquema de altruismo, de caridad, pero solamente es para personas de cierta fe y creo que este sistema debe trascender a esa idea muy sectaria que tenemos, ¿verdad? Simplemente, ahora, si con mi discusión, de veras, a lo mejor si no se logra el impuesto, si no se logra la distribución, pero yo ya impacté en la conciencia de las personas diciendo, oye, es tu responsabilidad, ¿verdad? Y puedes hacer algo, yo creo que yo ya gané, ¿verdad? Al menos yo estoy tratando a partir de ahí en decir, bueno, el gobierno lo puede hacer todo, pero también nosotros necesitamos echarle la mano, ¿no? Lo que sí veo yo es la constante protesta, etcétera, ¿no? Estéril, ¿verdad? Al menos, ¿no? Pero gracias, doctora. Incluiré ese asunto estructural en mi discusión. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
¿Alguna otra pregunta que tengan? ¿Algún comentario adicional? Bueno, pues si no hay nada, entonces agradecemos al doctor David Vázquez Guzmán por su intervención, por su interesante plática.
Gracias.
Pues esperemos que nos veamos pronto, tal vez para alguna colaboración con algún profesor del departamento.
Gracias.
Y pues encantados de tenerte en esta plática.
Muchas gracias a todos de veras por sus comentarios. Me voy bien contento, y aparte pues también felicitar a Miriam, Tony, a todos ustedes, sus colegas. De veras que me da mucha tranquilidad saber que están en una excelente institución. Gracias por la invitación, gracias por permitirme también dar las ideas. Todas las ideas de que me llevo aquí son valiosísimas, y pues ya me llevo tarea, ¿verdad? Muchas gracias.
Es lo más importante, exactamente. Muchas gracias, entonces hasta la próxima.
Gracias.
Gracias,
Entonces, sería todo, Luisa María, si tengo que hacer algo.